I'm Aubrey Stearn. I work at Pizza Hut Digital Ventures, which is a spin-out of Pizza Hut. We run a lab in WeWork, and we take IT pretty much out of Pizza Hut, and we do it independently. So we run one environment, and it's production. There are no other environments. We deploy around 48 times a day to production. We feature flag everything. And the way that ChatOps is structured is so that we are immediately aware of any problems that we have in that environment. So I've had a very long career, illustrious one. I've been a network engineer, a back-end developer, a creatively challenged full-stack developer. Eventually, I was head of IT operations, and finally failed startup founder. And during this time, moving from the enterprise world to the startup world, I've had to shift the way that I solutionize from a more fully formed, fully funded projects and solutions to much leaner efforts. And for me, ChatOps is really the embodiment of going from, I guess, bloated and monolithic to incredibly lean. So, what is ChatOps? Now, the talk was called What My Dad Taught Me About ChatOps. And I think my dad didn't actually teach me anything about ChatOps, but he did tell me some very funny ones. And that was that he knew this guy, this martial arts practitioner from Birmingham, and he knew all sorts of stuff. And the guy came up with something called phone box kung fu. And he said, if it doesn't work in a phone box, it won't work in a pub fight. Very Brummy thing to say. Something that I've always held with me, because I thought that it's kind of true, right? Like, when we build these solutions, we look at the tooling required to support them, and what is the effort required to bring that stuff with you. Do I have to carry my MacBook with me at all times? It sounds like it should be a PlayStation game, maybe Tom Clancy, but it's not. It's a shift from, again, very monolithic and bloated tooling to very lean. It's a model of interaction with our tooling that's more human, more natural, very conversational based. I would say it has the usual benefits of being better, faster, cheaper, but we say that about everything that we talk about on stage. You can use it with virtually anything, HipChat, Slack, Spark, almost any chat client that you can imagine. My 10,000-foot view is real-time execution of tooling with simultaneous collaboration and extreme transparency. I'm no longer a girl executing commands in command line, alone, without guidance. I'm usually surrounded by my team. I usually have their guidance. I usually have a feedback loop from them. Is this the right thing to do? Are we executing the right command? Is this going to break anything? And in that, we create almost a living document. So when we post-mortem an incident, it's quite cool that we can go and look back through that chat log, and we can see the commands that we executed, and we see the tooling that we ran. And it's very easy to just go and take that and say, hey, that was the action that we took on the night. So I kind of like this one. In transitioning, I've had to shift away from my 15-inch MacBook to a 12-inch baby Mac, because the big ones don't fit in a handbag. And this screenshot is actually me running our GT roster, and we call it unbouncing a hut, which is to say taking a Pizza Hut offline. And it's something that's actually built straight into our bot. So one of them will send us an email, and they'll say, hey, the oven's broken, or someone's broken into the shop, whatever. We need to take the Pizza Hut offline. And so this is me, in real time, taking one of the Pizza Huts off the website. So knowledge is inherently perpetuated. It's interesting when we implement new tooling, how much effort we have to put into flowing that through the rest of the team and growing the rest of the team and perpetuating that knowledge. The great thing about the way that ChatOps works is because your entire team is already watching the chat and already involved in the chat, that knowledge is sort of self-perpetuating. So quite often you're going to find people from product, people from parts of the business that would never traditionally get involved in those commands, suddenly learning how to do that and then being able to execute it themselves. And I guess when we talk about like sort of de-siloing DevOps and moving those silos of ops and development closer together, it sort of fits in very well because this perpetuates much further, much broader through the business, depending on who you have involved, than merely development and ops. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a demo. It's not like a live demo. I had to redact a little bit of information because some of it's sensitive. But this is my favorite part of the Pizza Hut pipeline. And this was originally put together by a chap called Roy Lyons and David Pachansky. And they were the guys that sort of said, hey, let's try ChatOps at Pizza Hut and see if this actually works. I have the most commits to our bot, mainly because of this. We have, like I said, one environment, so this pipeline is incredibly important to us to give us the signal. Now, signal is something that's hugely important to us. You can traditionally have a lot of noise on your chat client, and noise is terrible. And for us, we have a dedicated channel for this pipeline that just deals with one thing, and it's very much signal only. Now, our signal is when you can't order pizza. Now, if you're on our website, at any point, and you try and order something from Pizza Hut, and it fails and you don't get pizza, I promise you that someone on our team knows about it, 100%. And that is our measurable signal. And when that happens, everything that bubbles up from that is actionable for us. We need to take action because you can't have your pizza. Now, processing your errors and alerts with a bot in this pipeline means that we're able to augment it with new information and remedial actions. That's sort of how the pipeline works. Now, essentially, we poll for errors. So part of this bot will constantly go and poll our logging system and look for errors. You could use webhooks. Traditionally, I found that when you're an AWS Stack driver, when it starts to throw through that logging pipeline, it can get a little bit slow and you don't get them quite as soon as you expect, and polling can happen to be a bit faster, surprisingly. We'll then push the errors onto the pipeline one by one, apply processors, and then output something with the bot. And it sort of looks like this. Poll, pipeline. I've clearly found the effects in Keynote. Ta-da! Auto triage. Now this part of the pipeline is the part where we have a lot of historical knowledge and we look at the error and we look at the context and we say, what do we know about it? And what's really cool about this is we had new people join the team with no historical knowledge, and our bot would start augmenting the errors and say, this is why this happens, and this is who you need to talk to. The next stage it hits auto actions, and auto actions is the part where we say, what's the remedial for this? What are the things that we do often? Where are we violating dry? What do we keep doing that is something that we can make available to anybody? And then finally, we hit auto stats. And auto stats is something that, it was a question that kept coming up night after night. What happened? And so generally, the person who monitors this channel in the evenings, when Pizza Hut works, will summarize what went on during the night. And then we thought, man, that's kind of clunky. We miss stuff sometimes. And so we built auto alerts to sort of start logging in a very light way the events of the night. And then finally, it gets to the end of the pipeline. Ta-da! And we say it, and then we get rid of the error. And we do the same thing for every error that comes through that pipeline. Now, it looks like this. Obviously, the sensitive stuff redacted. And you can see auto triage at the bottom, and that gives us context. Unknown error, very useful. It basically means to our team that this is something that has happened on the POS side of things, and we don't have exposure to exactly what the error message that's coming from the POS is. And so we have to hand this over to somebody else. Auto triage here knows that this is a POS failure. It's figured out that an order hasn't been able to go through, and we usually have two situations here. Is it us, or is it them? So generally what we do is to take that order again, rebuild it, and send it to our test POS. And we can go and figure out if there's an issue with the POSes out in the field, or if we have misconfigured something and we're sending maybe a SKU that doesn't exist anymore. So, common pitfalls when implementing ChatOps. So, oh my God, let's integrate everything. As soon as you get a chat client, and I'm sure that everybody in this room has been there, the moment you set it up and you bring everybody aboard, it was like, shit man, let's go and add circle, let's add git, let's add all this stuff on the wall, and we'll bring it all in, and suddenly like, it's just pure noise. No value whatsoever. And it's, I promise you, it's like the first thing that everybody does. We had it the other day, we had somebody new join our team. And we have a development channel. It sounds like you would know what that is. Now, the first thing they did was to go and add the Circle CI integration into it, which made it even more noisy. And so consequently, the action of that is we have a new channel called Dev. And that's where we talk about development. Yeah, very common. So we actually managed to write off like another channel. And this is something that like almost 100% will happen. And you'll go through this and you'll figure out like, you know, what's important for us, what's not important, not what's the maximum that we can do. Syntax chaos. Everybody has a different and unique way of communicating and talking. And not everybody is going to execute a written command in the same way. And I think it's really important that when we start building out our tooling and our commands, that you think about what that does to your rate of adoption. So if you build your command in a way that's very difficult to figure out without calling help, you're going to lower that adoption rate. Whereas if you were to build in the multitude of different ways to say that same command, you're going to lower that bar. So people are going to try and execute it, and it's sort of going to happen. And that raises, lowers your bar of entry to that, and it sort of helps you perpetuate the tooling throughout the team. I've seen it a lot where we've had sort of MVP commands, and we've said, it's just a one-liner, match this pattern. And I've watched people so many times like, hotbot help, hotbot help. How do I execute this command? It looks like nothing other else. Some random person on the team has built this command, and they've done it so differently from every other command that they have to look at the help every time they do it. And it's really sad, and so these are things that I constantly go back and think, how do I change the language so this is very easy for people to execute? How does it follow the pattern that we've already laid down? I've made a monolith. If you get to this point, congratulations. You've basically hit the pinnacle of ChatOps. Basically, you have built a monster. You've put all of your stuff into this bot. It does virtually everything. It's now become part of your production environment and how you work. And now you have the same challenges as your production environment. You can't lose it. It's a liability. You need to start thinking about your fault domains and how you break this guy out and how you start to de-risk this tooling. If it does become part of production and then you lose part of your bot or one of your bots goes down or stops working, how do you still execute those commands that you've now come to rely on? Now we're fucked. I'm going to tell you, this is referring to something very specific. I'm sure a lot of you remember the great AWS outage of 2017, where we all found out where everybody's infrastructure was. That was a horrible night. It got us too. And we were quite lucky that we were able to change the TTL on CloudFront and save what was in the cache, and suddenly we were magically okay. But I think that hit so many people on the internet. And it's quite funny because the other day it happened again, and it was a minor blip in, I think, one of the availability zones, but it took down Slack. And suddenly there was like this huge panic on our team, and it was like, shit, this is the thing that we use to control everything, and we've got no fucking access to it. And I was like frantically texting people going, oh my God, we need like a backup plan, like let's create a WhatsApp channel. And I was just like, we really should have thought about this. We talked about this like it would never happen, like most disasters that will never happen. And then it happened. became a reality. Your bot could die for no reason whatsoever, and then suddenly, again, you don't have access. The chat client could die. It might not even be you. And I think there are several challenges when you look at this, because obviously a bot is not running over something where you can load balance over the top. It's just using a socket-based connection. So that RTC connection isn't something where you can broker from one to the other. They're all connected at the same time. So run more than one bot and you get more than one response. So there are some interesting challenges to scaling out these things. Scale API. So I thought I'd throw a very interesting demo out there. And this relates to the opening and closing of HUTs, which is a common toily problem when I'm on alerts. And what that usually looks like is there are a couple of actors in this. There is a random guy or a girl. There is an Aubrey, and there's a HUT. Now what will usually happen is the guy is going to go and send an email to Aubrey. And then Aubrey is going to get her laptop out. She's going to do science. And then she's going to close the HUT. This is like an okay process. It's pretty quick. We've got some great ChatOps tooling around it. I like it, but I always felt like we could do this better. So I went away and I thought, can we AI it? Can I do some word mining? Can I pull out the keywords from the email and do this in an accurate way and figure out where they automatically need to open and close a HUT? And it was really painful because the format of these emails was very different. And I think when you look to solve these problems, you can do it one of two ways. When you look at the business, you have that historical pain, you have the relationships, you have the third-party actors, the clients, the partners, and you have to perforate all that and put that new information in place and get them all to start using it. It's a very difficult, painful business change operation. Or you could do something at a much higher level and sort of clutch fix it. So I looked at this process again, the same process, and this time there's no Aubrey. Instead, there is a giant brain, which is a bot, that lives in the cloud. And the guy sends an email, this time to the bot that lives in the cloud. And he's going to figure out, I've got this request, it matches this, I'm going to go send it to this new third party. Giant circle with a rabbit and a chicken and a man and a person in a wheelchair and a woman, which is actually Scale API. Now, Scale API is this very cool system. It's sort of like Mechanical Turk. And they have a couple of really cool operations. One of them is look at this image and tell me the thing in this image. One of the other ones that I really like is the categorization. So you can give them a piece of data, and you can give them a statement request, and you can give them a couple of buckets and say, which one of these buckets does this fall into? So for me, this is really great. I'm it's easy, right? You just say, am I opening or closing a HUT? I give them 2 buckets. And so this should be really simple. And so in theory, I go and send this request off to Scale API, and they produce an email, and they send it back or to an endpoint in the cloud, and my bot processes it, and it says, I need to close the HUT. Very cool. And I'll show you how that works in my almost real-time demo, that I completely mistyped the command to start with. So I go and ask my bot Unicorn, and this is my lab, raise a question with Scale.io. And this is going to generate a random open or close statement. So off it goes to Scale, chicken probably looks at it and decides to go and do something. And it comes back and says, hey, I'm going to close a HUT. Awesome. So I've solved this massive problem that we had for 20 cents per request. Aww. RTFM. What did I not do? I didn't read the documentation. They told me immediate. For 20 cents, they would immediately solve the problem. Immediate, in Scale.io terms, is 6 hours. Yeah, not so useful. So this is a massive failure. But it only took me the morning to implement it, and I think it was a really cool idea. And if someone can make a Mechanical Turk that works much faster, I want to use you. The next thing I want to do is show you a little bit about the commands that we use at Pizza Hut. And these are like the day-to-day things that we use in our environment and things that we've developed. Hutbot, replay, giant GUID today. This was written by a guy called Leo Fernandez. And this was the one that sort of came out of, hey, we've got these orders that fail, and we don't understand whether it's because of something that we've constructed on the order, and Micros is throwing up an error, or is this an issue with a POS and something hasn't been deployed and it now can't process it? It's very cool. It's something that we use an awful lot. It's the one that looks like that, and it's the one that auto triage comes from. The problem that we had with this is that when you're on a mobile phone and you get a cute little error like that, you can't copy and paste the GUID, which makes for very painful working and constantly whipping out your laptop when you're down in the pub. Not so useful. And so this is really where I first started to modify our bot like in a very heavy way and to create that pipeline. And auto triage was the first bit because we get these errors back and sometimes we don't know whether they are unknown error or missing item error or something error. And again, we have people on our team that are more UI based. And although we're all full stack and we work across the entire stack, some people will lean one way or the other, and those guys that were leaning the other way didn't always know the context of the error. And so this was a really great first addition. And the second one, obviously, was to add the auto actions. And again, it's much easier on a mobile phone now. We just sort of press one button and fire the replay. And that will look like that. So all you have to do on a mobile phone now to go and hit one of our test bosses from the same order is to just press a button. The Canary. I quite like this one. So we have a guy called Tai Bannerman. And Tai does a lot of React and GA and stats on our team. And again, because we are a company that has one environment, and we will deploy to that one environment 46, 48 times a day, and we'll do it with tens of thousands of users on our live site. So we have the potential to do massive damage if we fuck up. So one of the things what we really need is a canary to tell us if something has gone horribly wrong, and we need to do that as early as possible. So we actually had this thing called StatsBot. Now I've taken out all of the important stuff just in case like Domino's or Papa John's is in the audience and I'm gonna get in trouble. But what this is actually saying is, this is what we did last time, and this is where we are right now. And it's telling us that something is going wrong. So for us, sometimes this is, we have taken a deal away that was very important, and people have a behavior that on that day of the week, they look for that deal, and now suddenly it's going horribly wrong. And this will alert almost as soon as it sort of gets the data from GA and says, hey, I can see an anomaly here. So we've set this threshold up, and this is our canary. So when we see this, we start to panic, and we'll do an immediate investigation as to what's gone wrong, what are the changes that we pushed, what have we changed in the UI, are we seeing something down on a particular device or a desktop, is Android playing up, have we changed something on iOS and now it's not working the right way, and suddenly like we're getting half of what we normally see. This is our canary. And it comes back to that point. Signal is very important to us, and this is one of those signals. So where do I begin if I want to do ChatOps? You need a chat client, you need a bot, and you need a script, or some sort of form of script. HipChat, Facebook Messenger, Slack, Skype, FlowDoc, Cisco Spark, WeChat. It seems like almost anything will work with them today. I would say that when you're going through this process of choosing a chat client, that you do need to think about stuff like security and context. This is, as I would put it, a window into your world. And it's very easy for us to forget about the constraints that we've had to live with so many years in terms of security and access. But imagine if somebody got hold of your phone and just opened your chat client and started closing random Pizza Huts all day long. So context is very important. Are we secure? And I guess one of the other things that's quite important is that not every one of these chat clients is built the same. So in the same way that Slack has applications, and you can see those cool little buttons, you can actually build entire apps in that. And so there's a part of BotKit that will do an interactive reply and allow you to replace those buttons. So you can basically build screens from one single prompt. You're going to need a bot. You can use Hubbot, which is from GitHub. And these were pretty much the first guys to go and do this. Lita, which I think is Ruby, or BotKit, which is Node.js. And each one of these will work with pretty much a multitude of chat platforms in a different way with different limitations. So it's up to you. You should use something that your team is comfortable with. The one thing you don't want to do is to implement something where, again, there's barriers, because the most important thing is collaboration. You want all members of your team to feel empowered to go and change the bot and to add commands to it and to further it. It should be a low barrier thing. I think that's pretty much it from me. If you have questions about ChatOps, come and find me later and I'll tell you more about them. Not much more to say other than go and try it for yourselves and you would be surprised the benefits that you would see throughout your team and that self-perpetuating learning and how great it is to see new people come on board and suddenly start picking stuff up from your tooling and you haven't even roomed them and said, hey, this is how this stuff actually works. They just see it and they just start moving with the ChatOps, so it's really cool. Thank you very much.